we are looking at the reasons why the demand curve is downward sloping from left to right. In other words, it has a negative slope. As we said, this economics is mathematics related. So we use some of the terminologies in in mathematics within economics. So the reasons why demand curve is downward sloping, why is the demand curve has a negative slope? It is starting from the left to right going downwards. What causes this strength of the demand curve? The positive slope usually is the one which goes up from zero upwards. That one is called the positive slope. When we are looking at the area of supply, we shall see that it has a positive slope. This one is negative because it is going down. In other words, as this one goes up, the other one is going down. So you have those terminologies in mathematics which end up calling them negative slopes. Why do we have it negative as a negative slope? One of them is the demand law, which states that the higher the price, the lower the demand. That is the demand law makes it downward sloping, makes it negative slope. The one which we depend on the law. The law states that the higher the price, the lower the demand. The lower the price, the higher the demand. That makes the demand curve negatively sloping. Another one is the substitution effect. Substitution effect, we know very well that when we talk of a substitution effect, commodities that have substitutes, in most cases, they have an effect. When the price of a substitute goes up, people tend to run to the commodity, the substitute whose price has gone down. So that one is another cause of the negative slope. When a commodity has many substitutes, there is a tendency of competition where people are reducing prices, others remaining high, and that leads to reduction in the demand for the one whose price is high, and the increase in the demand whose price has gone down. Commodities which don't have substitutes, in most cases, don't have this downward slope. If a commodity has no substitute at all, which is pure monopoly, that commodity is not going to have this downward slope. It will be perfectly inelastic curve. And as I told you, that in economics, we call curves, lines curves, when actually they are not supposed to be curves. Curves are like this, when something is bending a bit. But in economics, even a straight line is called a curve. The demand curve, the supply curve, all these are straight lines, but we call them curves. That's the language which we use in economics. So when I mention a curve and you see something straight, don't say this man is confused. I'm using economics language. I'm using a language which is economics. And therefore, I was saying that when a commodity has substitutes, there's a tendency of having this demand curve. That competition will bring in the lower price, high price. People will be running away from the high price, reducing their demand, and going to those commodities whose price has gone down. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a downward sloping curve. Then you have the income effect. Income effect, and here we are talking about incomes of the people. When we come to national income, we are going to elaborate more about this part of income. We have two types of incomes. We have what we call real income. I told you earlier that capital Y is a representation of income. So when I write it like this, don't say real Y. No, it is real income. Then we have what we call nominal income. nominal income. Real income, you can make a definition briefly here before we elaborate. Real income is income measured in terms of goods and services. If you get your income, the question is going to be, what do you buy that income with? How much do you get in terms of goods and services? That is the real income. So if I say my income is 1 million, that is the nominal. That is the monetary value. That is the market value. That is the market figure. Nominal income. Income which is looked at in terms of figures. That is nominal income. So my nominal income may be 1 million. But now when we convert that income and look at what it can buy in terms of goods and services, it is called real income. The real income is measured in terms of goods and services that are bought by the consumer. So here we are saying this income effect, that is the real income, not nominal. So if you want to put this point where the income effect, this refers to the real income of the consumer, how much he can buy of the commodity, of the goods and services. So among the poor people whose incomes are low, they tend to buy more commodities when the prices are low. Because he's a poor man, he cannot afford to buy a lot of commodities. So he tends to buy when the price goes down. If your income is say 10,000 and you have to buy several things, you only buy more when the price goes down. So the income of the consumer determines this demand curve, good downward sloping. That when the income is low, when you cannot afford the commodities, you tend to buy these commodities as the prices go down. You have been buying less, but because of your income, the moment they reduce the price, you buy more. And that one is determined by the income effect. Then we have another point, which is diminishing marginal utility. We have been talking about marginal utility, and we said the satisfaction you get from a product is the utility. And your willingness to pay for that commodity keeps on reducing as the utility reduces. So that means as utility goes down, which we call in economics diminishing marginal utility. As you take the extra unit, the utility reduces. That reducing utility is called diminishing marginal utility. As marginal utility diminishes, the consumer pays less for the next, is willing to pay less for the next extra unit. So that causes also this demand curve to be downward sloping. And we illustrated when we are looking at the marginal utility. We looked at it and said it is high at the top, at the high, this upper part. And as the marginal utility goes down, you are willing to pay less. Then another factor, what makes the demand curve to be downward sloping, is the uses of the commodity. Commodities that have many uses, usually they have high demand. But as the prices increase, you reduce on the uses of those commodities. And also that causes the demand curve to be downward sloping from left to right. So that is, those are the factors that we can talk about as the factors that determine that explain why the demand curve is downward sloping from left to right. The negative slope of the demand curve can be explained with those factors. We are now moving to something else. We are moving again now to something else, that is what is called the interrelationship interrelationship of demand. Different terminologies that are used in a demand. That's what we are going to interrelationships of demand. We are going to look at about 4-5 interrelationships of these demand concepts. When you're talking about demand, we are going to be considering looking at 4 or 5 terminologies. One of them is called composite demand. Composite demand. Composite demand. Composite demand. This is the demand of, or this refers to the demand of commodities. Demand of commodities which have various uses, or which can be used for various purposes or several purposes. Most of the materials that are used in especially production, even in consumption, you have various commodities that can be used with various items. It's one commodity but has many uses. We call that one composite demand. And that means that when you are demanding this commodity, you are not demanding it for only one purpose. You are demanding the commodity because it has various uses and or purposes. I think the best word is would be purposes to use. One of them is demand for electricity. The example we can have is demand for electricity. Demand for cotton. These are examples of composite demand. Cotton, you have electricity, you have water. These commodities, once you demand them, they have various uses. It's not only one use. If you demand a trouser, I think it is only putting on and move around. If you have, you can have several uses with a bed sheet, but we know that once you buy a bed sheet, you only use it to cover yourself when you are sleeping. Though in modern, in the current situation, they can sometimes be used as a curtain. You use it today as a curtain, tomorrow use it as a bed sheet, another day use it as a tablecloth, but that is a bit unique. The purpose of a bed sheet is only to be used in bed, sleeping, while sleeping. But when you put electricity if you put electricity in your house, it is not only for light. It has several purposes. The electricity will have several purposes. You can use it for light. You can use it to power your electronics like a computer, radio, TV. You can use it to iron. You can use it to cook. You can use it for machinery, which you use for various activities at home. So when you have electricity, it's the demand for it has many purposes. It is not only for light. Yes, some people may put electricity in their house purposely for light with one use. But again, if you get somebody who is innovative and comes in your house, you see him making so much use of that electricity for various purposes. So you can use electricity at home. One is cooking using electricity, another one is ironing using electricity, another one is using it for reading light, another one on a computer, another one is using it to charge the phone, another one is using it to run a washing machine, and so on. So that one, the demand for electricity, we call it composite demand. Demand which is having various reasons, various purposes. Cotton, the moment you grow cotton and you have cotton, especially the raw cotton, you are going to get the cotton, use it to make clothes. You are going to make a cotton. You have cotton and use it to make what we call is it feeding? Feeding these for cattle cakes. We call them cattle cakes. They use it to make what the cattle feed on. And then we use the cotton seeds to make cooking oil. So all these are uses with one product called the cotton. So if there is demand for that, then you are going to have various uses. What I think that one is an open example, very clear to everybody. The water, we use it for various purposes. So when you demand a jerrycan of water, you use it for cooking food, you use it for the. So we are looking at the composite demand, and we have said commodities that are having many uses. You demand one commodity, that is, say, electricity, which is going to serve you with a lot of activities. And I already mentioned that electricity will serve you ironing, cooking, light, and so on. Then cotton, it is the same thing. You have various activities or things that you can gain out of cotton. So when you demand cotton in your factory, you not use it only for making clothes. There are even other things like a cooking oil, like a soap, and so on. Then water, the same thing. It has many uses. At home, the moment you have water, you wash, you cook, you clean, everything, you drink, everything that you need for living will be used. Will use water. So the demand for water is not only for taking, killing thirst, but also for other purposes. That kind of demand is what we call composite demand. Then we have what we call independent demand. Independent demand. Independent demand. This is demand which is this demand does not depend on any other factor. Sometimes you say another reason. You demand, the demand is independent. You demand that commodity for its own purpose and nothing else. It has no external influencing factor or other influencing factor. It is a kind of demand for the commodity that does not need to buy any other commodity or any other related aspect. It is independent. That is what we call independent demand. Though such demand is usually rare in the real life, demand in most cases goes with something else. You demand a trouser to use it with a shirt. You not say, let me take this trouser. You have in mind that once I take this trouser, I may need also there will be another demand. It is not very common, but it is a situation where you can have demand and it is purely independent of any other aspect of life. Then we have the third one, which is derived demand. Derived demand. Derived demand is demand which is a result of having an initial demand for something else. That is what we call derived demand. It is demand which is a result of demanding something else. Something else. That the moment you demand this, it is a result of the initial demand that came first. There's something that comes first, then you demand this. So the moment you demand this, that means you demand A, there was demand for B, or you demand B, there was demand that started, or that comes first. The moment you say that you demand bread. If you demand bread, the first thing that you will demand before you get the bread is demand the wheat flour, the baking oil, and so on. So the moment you say, I'm demanding bread, it means there will be a derived demand for wheat flour. If there is a high demand for bread, definitely you find people demanding wheat flour. And you say, why are people looking for wheat flour? Because there is demand for bread. So sometimes the demand is a result, one demand is a result of demanding another factor, another aspect, another commodity. So it might be a service that you are demanding, but you find people demanding so much of one commodity. Reason, because there has been increase in the demand of a certain other commodity. So that's what we call derived demand. Demand which is a result of demanding another commodity. This is usually very common, and in economics, it is one of the basis of our study. That when you demand this, there will be definitely demand for this other commodity. So it is very, very important to look at these different demands. There's what we call, when we are looking at goods, complementary goods, goods that are used together. Meaning that the demand for one commodity comes as a result of the initial demand. If you see that on petrol station, the sales are very high, that means people have got vehicles. So the demand for fuel is a result of having had a demand, a very high demand for vehicles. So in most cases, the life we live in, the demand is derived. Many items that we have are derived from initial demands. You begin with this demand, which will lead to a demand of another commodity. So that's what we call derived demand. Demand of one commodity which comes as a result of demanding something else. That is another kind of demand. Besides, these are terminologies, these are concepts that you need to know about demand. You may find these ones also, you will find also these ones in supply, but this one we are looking at demand. Then we have what we call complementary or joint demand. Complementary or joint demand. Complementary, sometimes we call it joint demand. These are goods which are demanded together. I.e., that is, they are used together. They are used together, or using, we can use this very word. They are used in a complementary way. We use them together. This demand, that the moment you demand this commodity, you must also have the other one. Sometimes students confuse these two with derived. Derived does not mean that you use these things together, but the demand for this commodity leads to the demand of another commodity. It may not be used, they may not be used together. The demand for one commodity will definitely lead to the demand for another commodity. Yes, finally they may be used together, but sometimes they are even independent. But because of this, they are supposed you demand this other commodity. That is derived. That the demand for this commodity has come as a result of first demanding another commodity. But here, you cannot have one commodity used. They must move together. They must be used together. They are complementary. Once there is no this commodity, the other commodity will not be used. That is what we call complementary. They move together. Okay, these days, we have multiple sources. But in the past, we used to have a torch and dry cells. These days, we have rechargeables where you charge the torch. You may not see the relationship, but in the past, there is no way you could use the torch without the dry cells. So if you buy the torch, it was automatic that you had to have the dry cells. So these ones are bought together. The moment you start buying a torch, you must as well buy the dry cells. Those are complementary. They are used together. Without the other one, then this one becomes useless. I said with modernity, now torches, if you tell a modern child today, he will tell you we don't even know what dry cells are, because torches are rechargeable. Just put in the electricity and it works for some time without seeing the use of dry cells. But in the past, there is no way you could have a torch working without the presence of the dry cells. So that is what we call the complementary demand or joint demand. Then the other one that we have, and possibly the last one, is what we call competitive demand. Competitive demand. This is where we have demand for commodities which are similar, competing with each other. That is, the demand for this commodity is competing with the demand for another commodity. This comes when we look at the substitutes, which I have been talking about so many times. Commodities that have substitutes, and sometimes we say close substitutes, they have competitive demand. There is a competitive demand, competitive demand between Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. There is a competitive demand between Colgate and Close-Up. There is a competitive demand between this Kangaroo and the Kiwi. These are shoe polish. We call it what? Shoe polishing materials or polishing materials. These are competing. That the ones who are people who are making these commodities, they know that their competitors are so and so. I think we can also give the example of competitive demand between MTN and Airtel, because they are almost having similar products, so they are competitive, and so they are watching the consumers of these products, because they know if somebody does not take this product, he must go with this product. Commodities that are usually substitutes, they have competitive demand, and whoever is producing these commodities must know that the consumers will have a competitive demand. You are making this kind of product, but it is competing with another product, meaning that any slight change in the operation or in the service of one commodity will definitely affect the service of the other. Customers are just on their say, on their mark, sorry, and anytime they can divert, they can move to the other product. They can leave your product and go to the other product. So there is competitive demand. So these are the types of interrelationships that we have with the demand. And it's very important to know their definitions as well as their examples. Where do they operate, and how do they operate? Especially the composite demand, the derived demand, competitive demand, complementary demand. I said independent demand is another terminology, but it is a rare situation. Most cases, there is almost no demand which is independent, but here and there you may find it. But those are the four major ones: complementary, competitive, composite, and the derived are very important areas. A student must ensure that they are well understood, and not only understanding their definitions, but also understanding having their examples clearly given. So that is what we can say about the interrelationships of demand in this is price theory and the demand area. What we are moving to next is going to be the elasticity of demand. We are going to move to elasticity of demand as we continue still in our effort of looking at price theory. It's a wide area. We move slowly. We look at the concepts which we have been looking at. And we said the moment you miss out on price theory, if you fail to master price theory, then other topics will be a little bit harder, because it is the basis of almost all topics that we study in economics. Here and there, in every topic, we shall not fail to mention any little or big aspect of price theory. We shall be mentioning the demand, the supply, the price, so many things about price theory. So very, very important, very crucial to make sure that a student understands very well all the concepts, all the key elements, and all the areas of price theory, because it's a foundation, it's a basis of economics. So we are going to next look at the elasticity, price elasticity of demand when we come again.